This is week 2 of Patrick Lecture 37, which is on acceptance, right and wrong, as well as dignity with humility. And this section is about accepting life as it is. And I'm going to go into a bit of a story because it feels appropriate in terms of relating to the lecture and bringing some threads together. I have my own process, and I enjoy stories that have long setups. I love it when someone sets something up and then you have forgotten about it and then it hits you out of left field. I love stories and films like that, delayed punchlines. And the better crafted they are, the more delightful they are when you practically snort with realization that you've been led someplace and didn't even realize it. And that's my comic version of where I have been in the last year and a half, but specifically in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So let me give you some background on that. My mother died in 2014, and she had asked me to stand up as the person who said, leave her alone. She was 89, died in the hospital. So I told them to, at some point, to let her go. I was obeying her wishes. But when you deal with that emotionally, it's difficult, it's tricky. Did I do the right thing? Was there, the doctors disagreed? It's very complicated. And I find it easier to go straight into the jaws of hell, the jaws of negativity, and say, okay, I killed my mother. Now, that is not true. But I wanted to face the fear. I wanted to face the lie that some part of me was worried about, the doubt that I had. And I worked with that. I thought I was at peace with that. And my son died. It didn't mean to laugh. I'm just very sorry, but I'm seeing this now from a distance. And my son died in 2017 after struggling with something for 25 years. And I was emotionally involved in some decisions just before he died that led me to reflect upon the possibility that I had presented him with a choice. Basically, come live with me, stop living independently. This has gotten out of hand. Once again, the terror was that I had caused him to make a spiritual decision to leave. There may be a grain of truth in that, but I thought I had worked that out. Then my brother died a year and a half ago, and I was in an emotional argument with him a few days before he died of a sudden onset of a disease that nobody was expecting. And I thought I had worked through that. And then a participant oddly brought up a topic about 2 weeks ago, and it was as if I fell over the cliff. I fell into a hole. And I couldn't figure out what happened. And I had to go work with my therapist and work it out. What just happened? I'm depressed, I'm upset, I'm negative, I'm scared. What does this have to do with acceptance? People are asking. I'm going to get there. What we figured out was that I had fallen into the same trap that I am expert at helping other people avoid or pulling them out by saying the following words: you don't have the power. Meaning, unless you literally shoot someone, and even then you've got the power because they walked in the room while the circumstances were all present and the gun didn't misfire. Spirit is very able to defend a spiritual life from an egotistical human decision. Now, I don't want to go into that. That's very complicated. I'm just going to go for the short version, which is I don't have the power to severely distort someone's spiritual path unless that's what they wanted to do anyway. So it can be slightly co-creative, but what Patrick teaches is that we have more control than we realize, We just don't have the kind of control that the ego wants. And that is the meat of Patrick Lecture 37, an acceptance by the ego that it does not fully understand all the factors that are running around and being dealt with. And so it comes to some conclusions based upon its fears, its false beliefs, its negative influences or negative influences that have crept in. So back to how these two meet. My therapist pulled on me what I say to others, you don't have the power. And it was as if I was suddenly able to get out of my own feelings, my own fears. And I realized that I was trying to take responsibility for other people's lives. Do I have some? Yes, I have some. But there's a difference between influence and actually being responsible. Now, once again, it's way too complicated for me to go into the differences between an infant, a small child, a sick person laying in a bed, somebody where you can decide to hold their hand or not and they fall over a cliff. Life is very complicated. All I can describe is that I had not fully resolved these three family members with whom I was intimately connected, very close to the moment of their passing. There was a connection there that I can't name. Once again, the ego wants to name it. Some people can. I'm so pleased that some people are very poetic and capable of describing such things. I am not. So I go for the simpler examples. I go for metaphors. I go for a little bit of humor in this. I'm not in charge. And I must be responsible for the influence that I attempted to create, because it may have convinced someone, but it ultimately was their spiritual decision to leave. And in all three cases, there were many, many other factors indicating that they had come to end of life. So for me to take responsibility makes me arrogant. It helps me to see it that way. It helps me to snap out of it, to stop being so important. And so I freely use the term arrogance about myself. It is not meant to disparage me. It's meant to wake me up. It's like snapping your fingers saying, come on, come on, come on, wake up. So again, what does that have to do with acceptance? I was part of their leaving process. That is true. There's a sacredness about that. And sometimes the depth of our feelings and the depth of the reality is more than we can bear. And so we inflate, we fantasize, we minimize, we distract, all kinds of things go on. Because the idea of being a divine self and interacting with other divine selves is really serious stuff. It happens whether we want it to happen or not, but I'm saying that there's sometimes an inability to be in that balance place. Now, Patrick talks about balance as being dynamic, meaning you don't find balance and stay there. That's static, and that becomes stagnant. Real balance happens when you walk, even happens when you're sitting, because unless you're prone in a dead man's position, there's some motion, there's some realignment going on. But especially when you're walking or moving, there's a lot of factors going on. I like the fact that it has been extremely difficult for scientists to come up with robots that can walk. It seems so easy to us, and 2-year-olds, 1-year-olds, 6-month-olds sometimes seem to accomplish it with great ease. It's not easy. It is a magnificent exercise in controlling extremely complicated factors. So I could have used that example, but it seems banal and it seems unserious to talk about toddlers. But now I am, because I'd like to bring these two together with the idea of acceptance, accepting life as it is. We are miraculous. We are amazing. We do things that machines can't do. There was another article I read that said machines are good at math, but they're not good at figuring things out. And they put machines or AI in a contest with toddlers, and the toddlers won. We are creative. We are amazing. We brush past rules and break rules. We do a lot. Accepting life as is can sound like a defeat, and that was discussed during this week. It is not defeat. I went to the dictionary in the study guide and I looked it up, and it says that acceptance is taking something that's offered. In my case, last week, my therapist offered me a more benign, more generous, more loving explanation for my concerns than I had come up with. And my acceptance of that was taking something that was offered to me. I didn't just take it blindly. I received it. It's an active process to receive that and to really integrate it, digest it, enfold it, and then deal with the blowback. We accept 1 minute, we argue the next, it's back and forth. Accepting life as is, once again, is not defeat. It's victory. As it is, in the moment. Because if you accept life as it is in the moment, then you've got a ground to spring off of. Now, we've just finished the Olympics. It's August 2024. We've just finished, or closing in on finishing the Olympics, so there's a lot of sports news. Athletes use what they've got. They use their bodies, they use the floor, they use vaults, they use gravity, they use momentum, they use all these factors to do the most amazing things. We do that in our minds. A child learning the ABCs, a toddler learning to walk. People trying to figure out what's going on in life. These are not easy questions. It is easier if you ground yourself in reality. And to do that, you will need some feedback. Gravity is a feedback mechanism. It tells us where ground is. Feedback includes knowing whether there's weather and wind, what room we're in, what context we're in, who's in the room with us, what their attitude is, where they might be able to. Context is extremely complicated. We can't know all the factors. The more we are willing to receive, to understand, to see, to absorb, the more we will be dealing with actual reality instead of assumptions or reactions or fantasy. And so that's what I loved about Pathwork Lecture 37. It has a lot of spiritual components, but a lot of practicality in it. And the practicality is what really excites me about the Pathwork Lectures. So I'm hoping that all that connects together and helps you with another perspective dimension on acceptance, so that you can see that possibility of accepting life as it is, with perhaps a bit more generosity and less fear. And the lack of fear is addressed in other lectures. Can't teach everything at once, can't say everything at once. So I'm hoping that helps. Hoping you'll read the lecture. Study guide is just like serving an appetizer and saying, this is really great. Why don't you order a few of these? Why don't you read the lecture? I hope you do. And thanks for listening.